Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy Movie Mangoes podcast. I'm Spencer,
I'm Matt.
and we just watched a movie. And so we thought we'd do a reaction episode where we share our thoughts basically right after watching it.
And the movie we just watched was Saving Private Ryan.
By Steven Spielberg.
Starring Tom Hanks. What we're going to do is we're going to go for like a spoiler-free portion at the beginning of the video, and then we'll go straight into spoilers, give our thoughts about the pros and cons of the movie.
That sounds good. So this is actually your second time watching this, right?
Yeah, the first time I watched it was on the plane, so it was a plane movie, but it was great. It was the best out of the ones I watched.
Yeah. So I'm curious, was it better the second time or worse the second time?
I think it's like, I like the not knowing what was going to happen, because I think like going into the movie, you have like an idea of what you think the movie's going to be about, so you're not like surprised. But then like, so I'd say it's a little mixed, but more I enjoyed it the first time, because the second time, I think the first time there was like stuff that annoyed me that was like kind of ridiculous, because Steven Spielberg can be kind of goofy. And so like, I think the first time I was watching it, they did some goofy things and I was like, meh. And then like the second time, I didn't even seem to notice those things.
Yeah, there's definitely one part that I want to talk about in the spoiler section that I thought was ridiculous, but
So that movie I think came out in 1999. So would you recommend it to people now in 2024 to go watch it?
I mean, it is really gory. So if you're not into gore, then I wouldn't watch it. But
And foul mouth language.
yeah, there's some language. I've heard worse movies in terms of language.
Oh, okay. Sometimes the F word's worse to some people than the N word. So,
Yeah, I guess it depends on who you
on
are.
the age
and your race.
Yeah. So you do recommend this movie to people who are okay with that type of movie?
Yeah, and if you like war movies, because it is very much so a war movie.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend it to everyone, regardless of what you want.
Yeah. So what did you rate this on? You rated it 4.5?
That sounds right. Yeah, 4.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
So
would you rate it 4.5 still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I usually like to wait a couple years before I give it a lower rating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely up there as far as movies go. And you know how I rate movies, where it's like it's usually like a 2 or somewhere around there, for most movies I watch. So when I give it like a 4.5, that means I really think it's like way above cream of the crop.
Yeah,
so.
That's true. You are a harsh critic. I think I would give it a 5-star. I'm a pretty easy critic. I really enjoyed it. There was some parts that really frustrated me, but
do you want to go into that right now for the spoiler portion of our review?
Yeah, I guess, unless there's anything else you want to mention in the non-spoiler.
Nope, just go into it. Don't look up anything. Just watch it cold turkey.
Okay, this is your warning for spoilers. We are now going into the spoiler section.
Okay, so we're starting with cons first?
Sure. I'll start off with the thing that frustrated me the most. It's the scene where the guy is walking up the stairs. He's the interpreter guy who...
Upham.
What?
His last name's Upham.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But he's super scared about war and stuff like that. And you can tell when he's going up the stairs, he's like, the reason he's going up slowly is because he's scared. But the problem I had, so I don't think he knew that what exactly was going on upstairs, but I'm assuming he could hear there was struggling between two guys. And I feel like if I was in that situation, even if I was scared and I heard like a fight, then I would go up, because it's like a 50-50 at that point. So you would be the deciding factor. And basically, because he didn't go up the stairs, he let his comrade die. And then the other thing is he just let the guy walk past him. Like, what the frick was that? That would never happen in real life. Sorry, I don't know if I'm talking too loud. But.
No, yeah. Nah, I think I definitely hate him. Like it's funny how like I hate him more than the Nazis.
Yeah.
I think from like when I was first watching this movie, I was trying to see it through his perspective, and I really couldn't. And because I was like, yeah, I get being so scared that you're shocked, but he wasn't that. He was just being a coward. And he didn't end up living at the end. So it's like, it's really frustrating that way. But yeah, no, I think like most people instinctually would go and try to help their buddy. And it's like, I think it's one thing where it's like, if he saw 5 guys beat him to the punch, and it's like he's nothing that he can really do about that, because like if he tries shooting at him, they're definitely gonna kill him.
Mm-hmm.
I get that, but like you said, like with the struggle, it's like, or not even willing to try to warn the guys that people are coming up the stairs, or even trying something is like, I don't want to say irredeemable, but unforgivable, but pretty much yeah. It's
like if I was in that situation and I lived knowing that I maybe could have saved one guy, like that would haunt me like forever. I don't know. I mean, I guess all the aspects of war would haunt me forever, but that specifically would be like, I shouldn't be alive.
Yeah, and like I say, like I think this movie does a pretty good job of like, they're not like the Nazis from the Indiana Jones movies where they're all like mustache twirling villains where they're just like evil, want to do evil stuff. All they care about is power. It's like people, like even though they are on the wrong side of history, you can just tell that like most of them are just in a bad place. Where even the character who sings the Steamboat Willie song, that Nazi guy,
Mm-hmm.
I even felt like more sympathy towards him because like we see at the beginning of the movie, there's like Nazi soldiers who get killed after surrendering, and so there's no guarantee how he's going to get treated as a prisoner of war.
Mm-hmm.
So I can totally see why he like went back to the Nazi line and continued on fighting. And it's possible that like he was saying, he got caught up in the circulation and they would put him back in the front, you know, because it's like, what are your choices, right? They're not going to let you go home, you know?
Yeah.
So I felt more sympathy for him. And, you know, even the guy who who walked past Upham through the stairs, like he kind of just saw that Upham was just a coward and wasn't going to cause him any harm. So
yeah, that's the other thing. I don't know. I would think that the German would either take him or kill him. Like,
yeah, I would have killed him.
Leaving a soldier on the other side could be a liability on the battlefield.
Right.
So like
And
it makes no sense to leave him there, even if he does look like a coward. So that whole scene was just my biggest problem with the movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a way. I think it was, I don't know what the point it was really, but I think like, you know, I guess like besides the fact that war messes with people's brains, I think like that level of cowardice is kind of just unexcusable. You know, there's lots of like situations like trench warfare is different. Like if you're just have like high anxiety, like run like out of the trenches, I totally get that. That makes sense to me. But leaving your buddy to die like that is that's terrible.
Maybe Spielberg was trying to show all the aspects of war, and I bet there were some people in the actual war that were like that. So that's my only justification to what Spielberg was doing with that scene.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, like we're saying with like a ton of war films where they usually try to pick a guy who's like not really meant to be in the fight and he ends up in like the front lines and he ends up making a ton of mistakes. It seems to be like a common trope in war movies.
Yeah.
And he was also pretty like naive and moralistic to begin with is the other thing that really bothers me about him. So that was the thing that was different for me this first time, like, or like the second time watching it, is I was like trying really hard not to like make comments about how much I hate him during the whole time, because he's, you know, just in the beginning he's all like, no, war crimes are wrong, war crimes are wrong.
That's true.
And then he like commits probably like one of the worst war crimes, or like the dumbest things at the end, where he like kills the guy who sings the Steamboat Willie song and just lets the other ones go. And I was just like, it felt like he was just trying to cover his tracks. So it didn't even like feel like it was out of anger for letting him live, and he came back and killed like his buddies. So it just felt like he was saving his own butt. And, so I'll also, I guess I'll talk about some of like the cons of like the goofy stuff I was talking about this Spielberg did. So the first thing that comes to mind, you remember like when the guy like gun jam and then like the German like throws his helmet at him, and then he throws his helmet back at the nerd. I was like, even that's like a funny scene. I think it is kind of like just silly, you know, to have in a movie. And that's one thing where so Steven Spielberg, he made this movie in 99. He made The Last Crusade, the Indiana Jones movie, in 89, and he made like Indiana Jones 4 in 2008. So it's kind of like it feels like over time he just became less serious and less about action, you know. And so I think there's like, you know, like the sniper who he's like saying like prayers while he's killing people. I was like, that's a little too much, you know.
What? That totally went along with his character. That was one of my favorite characters in the movie.
No, I think he's cool, but it's like kind of doing that, and that tone in that scene at that part, it was just kind of like, come on, you know.
What do you mean? Come on, that was great.
Is
I love that.
It's just a little too cheesy. It's just a little
No,
too
I don't think it was cheesy.
too
I
little hammy.
thought it was badass.
I'm trying to think of other stuff. The first like 20 minutes of the film, I think everyone needs to watch at least. Where
All the gore.
yeah, all the gore. I feel like it does the best to show like the horrors of warfare. And because Dallin was asking, do I think was that worse or like Hacksaw Ridge? And it's like I was saying, it's like the only reason why Hacksaw Ridge is worse is because it's just longer. It's a longer sequence of like horrific warfare. If this was like the same amount of runtime, like an hour, then it would be like I'm not sure which would be worse, but
Yeah.
I think like the thing about Hacksaw Ridge is it shows more of like the actual like killing and like the mischievousness of like the Japanese and like using little weapons was like, whereas like this one's like showing more like body parts and like wounded soldiers and like people crying out for their mom, you know. Where I think like some of the more of the deaths in Hacksaw Ridge is pretty like mostly clean, you know, where it's like it's pretty quick. So this shows more like lasting fees, and they do like in this movie focus more on like the medics side as well, where they're like sewing up people who are like crying and like bleeding profusely and just trying to cover up and like try to morphine them. I don't know, any other cons that you think should be discussed before we go into
I do
pros?
have one minor one, and emphasis on the minor. I think overall the gore was very realistic. Like, you know, in like Kill Bill, the gore is like over the top, obviously not real, comedic almost pretty much. Whereas this was like very serious, very realistic. It's a very minor con. There's 2 blood parts that I thought were over the top or unrealistic. And maybe, I don't know, I've never seen someone get shot by a bullet, so one of these may be realistic. But the one is when the 2 guys, I don't remember their names, but one of the guys was the ones that was stabbed, and then his buddy was shot. But before they were shot, they sensed like someone was coming up the stairs, and so they shot the guy behind the wall. And then there was like a second where there was nothing, and then you hear a thud, and then like a pool of blood comes out. That was like yes, blood would pool out, but that was like someone behind the wall like spilled an entire bucket of blood for the effect. It was like way too much, way too fast.
Right.
So that was one. And then the other one was the sniper sequence when he's saying the prayers and shooting people. One of the people he shot, like blood shot out like an insane amount. And it was just those 2, so it's very minor. Overall, I thought the gore was very well done.
Yeah, or even like the guy who like was putting the sticky grenade like hands on the tank.
Oh yeah, and he exploded.
Yeah, it felt more like it was like the comedic. I don't know what you call it, but it was like a balloon
Splatter.
popping. Yeah, splatter instead of like bones and guts and everything. You know that would be there to show. And
that was probably a practical effect, is why I'm guessing it looked the way it did.
It looked like it like cut from like a real person to the practical effect.
Yeah,
and so it kind of made it look like less real.
But I mean, I don't know how I'd make that look more real.
Yeah.
Unless it
well,
was
they did a really good
CGI.
job with like the D-Day or like the storming the beach part of it with like
Yeah, that's true.
blood and guts. So I think there's like tons of people who are exploding and or like those guys on the grades are like when a grenade lands on them, you see like body parts and limbs. You know, it's not just like blood spurts. You know,
That's true.
But yeah, like you said, I've never seen warfare, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's some things they could have done. Well, that's the thing is that's why I always say with a lot of movies is like I get that like the technology's not always there, you know, and there's like limitations with that, but there's lots of things you can do realistic. And I think the pros of this movie is like Steven Spielberg did a really good job of doing that, where he used a lot of practical effects and realistic takes on warfare. Have you ever heard of the movie called Paths of Glory? It's a Stanley Kubrick film.
I've probably heard of it, but definitely have not seen it.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny watching that where it's like when people are getting shot, you don't see any bullets because it's like it was made in the 50s. So it was like, you know, it's just an old movie, but like people are like clearly just falling over. They're not even like good stuntmen. They're just like falling and pretending like they're dead and shot. And so versus like this movie is like, it really looks realistic and I think adds to that. So I think one other pro. So if we were to go into the pros.
Yeah, we can go into the pros.
Steven Spielberg did a really good job with directing the characters in the story. And I think the pacing is a little slow. It's like almost a 3-hour movie, but I think like Tom Hanks, everyone's acting is spot on.
I think Dallin mentioned this, and I kind of agree. about the pacing. The war scenes are kind of long.
Hmm.
I think the point could still get across and be cut down a little bit. Like the beginning war scene and the ending war scene, if they just cut those down, I think it would have improved the film a little bit. I mean, it was still really good, but yeah, the pacing was kind of slow and it felt long towards the end. But
Yeah, I agree. There. Well, what's funny about the Upham scene where he like is taking forever with the ammo and such is like we're not really getting fed any like new information. We're
mhm.
just seeing stuff, and I think you're like saying at the beginning like a lot of this movie is unspoken, where like
Oh
characters
yeah,
aren't like sending lines, and I was gonna pretend like it's an art thing and like they're being cool and artsy and brevity and like all this crap, but I was like, no, it's really just nothing's happening, and it's like we're not like it's one thing when you're seeing stuff happen and it's making sense, but like at the very beginning when they're like delivering the news to people about sons or their husbands being killed, and they're preparing us for the situation where it's explaining that this mom lost three of her sons, and we're deciding if we should try to go out and save the fourth son so she doesn't
mhm.
have complete heartbreak. That scene like really took forever setting that up, and I agree it could have been a lot of things could have been cut down shorter,
Yeah.
and or at least have more to do with the characters so we can be attached to them. I think like that's probably try not to. I think a lot of characters were good, but I think like their deaths would have been more heartbreaking if we got to know them more.
Oh really?
Yeah, like all of them were like I was like sad, when they all died. We could have gotten to know them more and feel more heartbreak.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it did a pretty good job. The one pro of the movie having slower pacing is it helped. I feel like it helped somewhat with getting to know the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like the part where they're listening to the music on the steps and they're like just talking to each other. I feel like that was pretty slow, but it helped us learn more about the characters. But yeah, I the other thing like you mentioned all the people that died though I felt sad, but the people who didn't die, like I feel like we didn't know that much about them. Like I don't know what his name is, the guy who almost left the group because he was upset at the captain.
Oh yeah, he lived. I can't remember his
Yeah,
name.
we didn't I feel like we didn't know that much about him, but
Mm-hmm.
he lived. So I feel like that was okay.
Yeah, I think you were saying he's like a Debbie Downer,
Yeah, throughout
and
the movie he's the Debbie Downer, but
but
at the end you end up liking him.
yeah, and I was gonna say like that's pretty much the rest of them too, where it's like as far as like character differences are, we don't really there's not much to differentiate like what makes them different from one another is like
Yeah.
they're all kind of negative, they all kind of hate Ryan, they all so I think like there could have been more time to flesh them out, and I think it is like a big deal when you don't know like a character's name, because it
Yeah.
says like that says something about the writing and the presentation.
Well, I don't know. I don't think I knew most of their names. Like the second in command to the captain, don't know his name. The mustache guy. Like I'm calling them by how
Yeah,
I.
I like Vin Diesel's how I described that one character, and
Yeah,
we because they never like I think one thing is like phonetically they don't sound good.
Upham. Like
Up
what is
'em.
that name?
Yeah, or like the Tom Hanks's character is like Captain Miller. I don't think I knew that watching both times until the very end.
Yeah, I don't think it's mentioned
The
until the very end.
Oh yeah, I think like people in passing, like the beginning, or like
Oh,
Captain Miller.
oh,
That's the other thing about this movie is like I think it is a good thing because it kind of brings in the realism of like things are happening right now and then, but they're like pretty quick. Some things are shaky. Like I even like appreciated when they introduced Matt Damon's character into the mix because it's like it's right when that tank's running by and he's telling them to drop, so they start shooting at it, and then they're trying to figure out who's shooting like the RPG at it. That's when like Matt Damon and those other two guys pop up,
hmm,
and like it's kind of like it does a shaky cam. I think this movie does like like every camera angle they could do. I think they did it well for the proper scene.
I agree.
Like even like I like the first Hunger Games, but like they do shaky cam too much sometimes.
I really like the first Hunger Games. It was in my top 5.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
No problems with that movie.
Oh, okay. They did everything right. No mistakes.
Flawless.
um,
I really like that movie. I think to sum it up, I guess the last thing that I would say is I think the message is really good too. Like, even though we're not in war, like, we should live our lives to the fullest,
mhm.
like we earned it, thanks to those who did actually serve in wars like that. So that's, I guess, all I would say. But really, really well done movie.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this week's episode.
You're doing the outro? Yeah.
But join us next time and like and subscribe and kiss my butt.
Matt's fired from doing the outro.